So before we talked about bonding, we also talked about the atomic structure. So in there, inside the nucleus, we have two different particles called neutron and proton. Okay, that actually determines the mass of an atom. So actually, that makes up the mass number, right? So if you have the same atomic number but different mass number, then that kind of relationship is called isotope. Okay, and we also talked about the radioisotope that is used in tracing the material in your body. Okay, so if you take in iodine, which is radioactive, then that will actually go to your organ where iodine is used to synthesize a hormone. Okay, and one example was thyroid. Okay, so then it will radiate because it's going to go through the natural decay. Okay, so that's how we can actually label stuff in your body. Okay, and watch what's going on in your body. Okay. So that was the main topics that we talked about in the last class. Okay. So today let's talk about more terms that appears in biology. So on page 39, they talk about hydrophobic and hydrophilic. Okay. So this is a very important term in bio. Hydrophilic. Okay. So in last class, we talked about water's polarity. All right. So remember, water is a polar molecule. Okay. And with the covalent bond that is polar. So polar covalent bond. Okay. And electrons are pulled towards this way. Okay. And if you add up these dipole moments, then overall the net dipole exists. Okay. So this is the polar molecule. All right, so if water is polar, right, if it is hydrophobic, that means it doesn't really like water, okay? Hydro, water, phobic, not liking, okay? So if it doesn't really like water, that means it doesn't really interact with water, meaning it's basically non-polar, okay? Very non-polar because polar actually likes polar. Polar likes polar, okay? Non-polar likes non-polar, okay? So like dissolves like, okay? So non-polar molecules are usually hydrophobic, okay? An example is like lipid or fats, okay? So those ones are the hydrophobic, okay? Hydrophilic means it likes water, so liking philic, water, okay? So these ones are usually polar molecules, okay? Or charged molecules. Charged, okay? So if there's ions or the molecule is polar, then you say that this is hydrophilic, okay? So these two terms are very important because when you're talking about lipid bilayer later, okay, then we'll talk about how the lipid bilayer works, okay? So let's briefly look at that right now. All right, so we'll look at this today, okay, later. But so this one is the phospholipid that makes up your cell membrane, okay? So this is a cell membrane. This whole thing is a cell membrane, okay? And in there, if you magnify the membrane, it actually is consisted of each lipid molecules like this, okay? And if you look at the structure of a lipid molecule, so one lipid molecule actually looks like this one, okay? So here, lipid is very special, phospholipid, okay? Phospholipid is very special because the first part, the top part is actually hydrophilic, okay? And this one is hydrophobic because if you look at the structure, this one is charged right here. Do you see that? It's N+, okay? So if something is charged, that means it's gonna like water, okay? And this one is hydrophobic, okay? Because just by looking at this, it's very long carbon chain, meaning this is non-polar region. So it has both polar and non-polar region within the phospholipid, okay? So this is very advantageous in forming a lipid bilayer. Let's get this one, okay? So here, this is a membrane, okay? And this is inside the cell. This is cytoplasm inside the cell, okay? And this is outside the cell, all right? So as you know, like most part of our body is water, right? So outside the cell, most of the environment is going to be water here, okay? So what is actually adjacent to is this hydrophilic heads of the phospholipids, okay? So